All right.
Libby does that all the time, like in front of other staff, and people are like, "What the hell are you doing?"
She got that from me.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, because I told her what it was for and how to actually implement it in the office, and
Apparently, air cigarettes are just as addicting as real cigarettes.
Mm-hmm. Ryan, it's good to see you. It's been months.
It feels like it's been even longer than that.
I know, exactly. Well, we said we were going to come back in August. We said we're going to come back in October. I don't know where I got August from. It was July last time, and the AC was broken.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it was about 1 billion degrees.
I remember that too.
And so we said we're going to come back in October and film these once it cooled down. And
it's like 10 degrees cooler.
No, but it's still, at least you can still sit down here and not sweat.
Yeah, I'm wearing a sweater today.
Yeah, same. Exactly.
That's perfect in here.
I brought someone. Rick, would you like to introduce yourself to the lovely folks back home?
Okay, thank you, Jack. Thank you, Ryan, for having me on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Dad.
Yeah. Rick Russell from Channel Markers is Jack Russell from the Porthole Podcast's father, in case that wasn't obvious.
Yeah, just another guy from the naval community.
Yeah.
Now I was a historian for the Navy. Is that what you want?
Yeah. Tell the folks about yourself.
Okay. Well, my professional career, I started as a historian for the Navy. I worked down at the Washington Navy Yard at the old Naval Historical Center, which is now the Naval History and Heritage Command. Mm-hmm. And I now work as a naval history subject matter expert for General Dynamics IT, GDIT. Mm-hmm. And in between, I was in publishing for 20 years.
What'd you do there?
The last 13 of that, I was director of the Naval Institute Press.
That's where I work.
That's where you work.
Yeah. Oh, so this is like a conspiracy here. This is like people will start to understand what's really going on.
We're replacing you with a more experienced model.
Exactly.
More experience is very kind.
Yeah. Well, and then
yes,
Rick, you're so not only do you do the Channel Markers series on this channel, but you're the primary researcher and script writer for pretty much everything that is scripted and researched. So none of these episodes.
Yeah. Right. Battle Stars and Channel Markers and the now defunct short course.
Yeah, there you go. That's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
But we thought, we'd have you on today since we were here for Ryan. Your Battleship New Jersey is hosting a Leyte golf event tomorrow on Saturday, whatever the date that actually is.
Yeah, we're filming this on October 25th, the 80th anniversary of the battle.
There you go. So perfect. And then, of course, Jack NFL's flying in later this evening, and so it'll be a good time. So we thought we'd get in a few podcast episodes before they show up.
Plenty of time.
Well, we thought we'd invite Rick into a shipbuilding Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, are we kind of hosed for the future episode? Maybe? Since Rick's the subject matter expert. Anyway, we'll do the intro, and we'll be right back, and we'll dive into some shipbuilding. So, Rick.
Yes.
Dad.
Jack.
When I started at the Naval Institute, it was hard because I worked under Rick for about 8 months before he left, and it was always this: is it Dad? Is it Rick? And Dad always had this weird, like, it was unprofessional. So
yeah.
So it became Rick, and
nothing warms your heart like Dad. So it's hard to get used to Rick when now he uses it all the time.
I don't know if I could call my parents
by their first name.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I don't know if I could work with my parents, one, but I don't know if I could address them by anything other than Mom and Dad.
See, Dad and son suggests a hierarchy that we're trying, since we're technically business partners on this channel.
Not technically, we are. Yeah.
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 It's Dad and son suggest this hierarchy where he still is somehow better than me, which I guess is fair. I mean, let's just be real.
I'm just older than you, Jack. That's all.
I will have the same glorious head of white hair before too much longer. For what's left.
I was going to say, I hope I have hair left to turn white.
So,
Yes.
shipbuilding,
Right.
Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. Ryan, when you took us around the dry dock, which we've talked about on episodes, one of the things that was pretty obvious was the condition of the yard itself.
Urban decay is a term that comes to mind.
Yeah. It didn't seem like there was, for being active enough, it was really amazing to see just how it looked like it was this time capsule, like it had just been like left to time. Can you speak a little bit about sort of maybe your own experience with that yard?
Yeah, it's really wild going around the former Philadelphia Navy Yard, because some of it is still active and being used, and it looks like that, even though it's got a mix of old stuff that was in use when the Navy still operated there and newer stuff that's come in. Some of it's been completely redeveloped to other uses, businesses and retail, and I think they've even got housing there now in addition. And then some of it has just been allowed to fall into decay. So it's really why, and you'll see all three of those in the same exact block as you're walking through the place. It was a fun place to work as a historian, because there was so much history around us, but kind of sad to see. We were the last ship that Philadelphia Ship Repair did before they closed up shop.
That's crazy. And Dad, Rick, you're going to talk to who I guess owns it, or it was sold to.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Now, when we were there that day, it was great because you pointed that out, and I'm like, yeah, that looks like, time forgotten. This old Navy Yard. Well, it turns out, I guess, that this Norwegian company, Aker Werner, they were just leasing the property, so they had some very specific uses for the space and everything. But now it's been sold to Hanwha Defense USA, so South Korean company. This is all part of the effort to get the foreign South Korea and Japan involved in our shipbuilding. So the lease is going to be up. That's going to be it. And so the Norwegians are out, South Koreans are in once they get through regulatory process. And then apparently, then the idea they will revitalize the yard because they will actually own it, that type of thing,
and turn it into something that's capable of fixing. We're not sure if we're going to be producing, but certainly could repair.
Yeah, we're not shipbuilding yet because there's a few more hurdles there. But if the shipbuilding happens, it's probably going to be in South Korea or Japan, that type of thing. This is going to be for major repair and things like that. But that all, we kind of missed that because that all came down right before when you guys got together in July.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and now it came up again lately. This company is based in McLean, Virginia. And so they've got a few bureaucratic hurdles to jump apparently, but looks like it's coming. Then I guess they'll do repair and maybe modernization too. I don't know.
But in many ways, that's just as important as building new ships, is keeping the ones that you have fighting fit.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's our problem. You think about World War II when they had the floating dry docks forward deployed, and everything. Now, where they put them on a floating tow truck and bring them all the way home. Like, we're not going to have that kind of time. Major repairs, I guess, that kind of thing. But yeah, our infrastructure is in decline, or has been.
I guess with the dry dock that New Jersey was in still operational, you'll be able to fit. I mean, you wouldn't be able to fit. Did this take Nimitz class care? They probably wouldn't, considering the width.
one we're in is too narrow.
It's too narrow, right? But lengthwise, but yeah, widthwise, yeah, for sure.
4 and 5, the two next to 3 where we were, those might be wide enough. I think they've taken some of the conventional carriers in the past.
Right.
The problem there is that they're nuclear powered.
Yes.
So I think you're pretty much
either Hawaii or Norfolk.
Yeah.
So, well, let's talk about the history of the yard really quickly, because I think part of so we're talking about why this is a big deal today, but maybe we should understand what was built there originally, and maybe why, as a country, we keep losing these yards. And granted, this one's not completely lost, but there are numerous yards that have been lost, just outright. Ships that were built in the yard.
I'll save the obvious ones. Not the obvious ones, the best ones for you. The ones for, but
Battleship commander here.
Yeah. We did an episode not too long ago on force structure, and one of the rules of force structure is when you go to war, you're going to fight with what you have. So in the War of 1812, the Madison administration, Congress thought it was a great idea. Let's declare war on the world's greatest naval power, and then pass the appropriation bill. Mm-hmm. Well, none of the ships built under that appropriation bill appeared in time to fight in the War of 1812, of course. That's why we have that rule now. And but one of the ones was one of the first ships of the line, USS Franklin, named after one of the founding fathers, Ben Franklin. 74 gun ship of the line. Apparently, really, really good ship. But we didn't fight anybody except for a long period of time. And I'm not sure it participated in the Mexican War. But anyway, that was one of the earlier, more famous and larger projects. You know. But shipbuilding in Philadelphia goes way back in commercial shipbuilding. They built one of the original frigates in Philadelphia. They built the Philadelphia in Philadelphia, subscription frigate that unfortunately the Barbary Corsairs captured and Decatur had to burn.
But by many accounts, the best of the subscription frigates, the best of those 7.
Yeah. So, and Ryan, maybe you know, because I'm not going to say I do, but the Navy Yard counts its birthday from like 1801, because we didn't have a Navy department until 1798. Officially, it was the naval affairs were handled under the original War Department. But they were at one location in Philadelphia and then kind of morphed into League Island.
Yeah. So basically, right across the river from where the battleship is now was I think Joshua Humphrey's shipyard where they built United States.
Yeah.
And then the Navy buys the yard from him and it becomes the Navy Yard in 1801.
Yeah.
And they quickly grow out of that. And so I can't remember what year it happened, but they moved down to League Island.
It's like in the 1870s, I think that was. They finally moved everything in by 1875 or something like that. Okay, all right. So it's nearby, but not adjacent.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Then it goes on, obviously, in the 20th century.
World War II, or sort of the
World War II era.
Yeah. So just continuing on with maybe recognizable ships from the yard.
Okay. Well,
Yes.
Minneapolis, C-836,
mm-hmm.
heavy cruiser. Wichita, a one-off, forerunner to the Baltimore class,
right.
C-845.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get to the big ones.
You got battleships like Washington, New Jersey, Wisconsin, and Illinois would have been built there. Was sort of laid down briefly.
Yeah. It's funny because we walked over to the parking lot that I guess was the slipway where Washington was built. Mm-hmm. So like right next to New Jersey would have been where those slipways would have been. So, and that's where Washington, and was one of the cranes still there, or was one of the metal structures, one of the gantries still there in place, or I can't remember that or not.
No, none of that like overhead stuff was still around, but you could very clearly see the 2 parallel battleship slipways there at the ends of the parking lot. Mm-hmm. And then as it comes down towards the river, they sort of paved it flatter so the cars don't just
slide into the river.
So 3 Essex class.
Yeah.
After the battleships. Yeah. Toward the end of the war, and then slightly afterward. Yeah.
And then when do we stop actually building ships there?
The last Navy ship built was Blue Ridge, which was launched in 69, completed in 70, I think, somewhere around there.
And then it's been a repair yard ever since. Right.
Until this is where our problems start. Cold War ends. How's that thing? Yeah. So as early as 91, they recommended that the yard be closed, and as a drawdown, because the Cold War had been declared officially over in 1990. Soviet Union dissolved at the end of 1991, but they were already thinking about contracting the defense industrial base. So Philadelphia and Pennsylvania fought it for a while, but it was closed in 1995.
And then when does the yard go private? Was it ever or
No, it was.
Okay.
Philadelphia was part of it, right? I mean, it was like around
When the
2000, I think, somewhere. I think.
Yeah, when the Navy pulled out, they gave basically the entire property to the city. And so the city has been working on developing, and a lot of the infrastructure that still work, like 4 of the 5 dry docks, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they lease out to various companies.
Okay.
And then a lot of the other space they've been, I forget what the name of the development corporation is, but the city's been working with the development corporation to bring some sort of economy back there.
Right.
Like, I was surprised to see, like, isn't Tasty Cake have their headquarters down there?
Yeah.
So like, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, there's a famous brand from if you grew up in this area, which I did, and
Right along that drive where you come in.
yeah, where we come
Right,
in, I think. Yeah, right. That day we.
Yeah, when the wind was blowing from the right direction, we could smell brownies in the dry dock.
Oh, that would have been a crazy distraction. That and the Chick-fil-A down the street.
Yeah, and engine oil.
Yeah, and the grease and everything else.
Yeah.
So in the last episode that we did in July, we talked about New Jersey's reactivation, because obviously you were getting that question a lot. And that was actually a pretty popular episode. You all liked that. But we raised the point in that episode about U.S. Navy shipbuilding just as a whole, but we didn't really go into detail too much. And then also this idea that, could you bring back a ship of this size? Give it, obviously with enough time and with enough money, sure, but where are you going to do it? What's the resources required, like in terms of knowledge? Do people know how to work on this ship still? Could you train a crew to actually operate it? Is that even possible? And then of course that led to the greater shipbuilding question, with shipyards like Philadelphia Shipyard being in decline, how they have been. What state is our shipbuilding in this country right now today? And I think you're going to put your GDIT hat on, your General Dynamics hat, and you're going to talk about that.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, this is a great example right here in Philadelphia. We used to have about, not too long ago, at least in my lifetime, professional lifetime, 12 public yards. And that's just public shipyards. The Philadelphia area used to have William Cramp. Up and down the river, there was Kearney, all the way up to New York.
New York Ship, Sun Ship.
Yeah, Sun Ship. I remember when I was a kid going to Sun Ship and watching a container ship being launched. I mean, that's down in Chester. So you could do things like that. But as far as the Navy Yard, we only have 4. We have 4 public yards right now, and they're one's at Pearl Harbor, of course. We have Puget Sound, for example, and they really are just focused on repair and do some upgrades like that. A lot of our shipbuilding is just focused on, Newport News, Electric Boat, Huntington Ingalls, which ends,
and they're still right. Beth, is that what you just said?
Yeah,
you're right. Yeah, right.
They were acquired too. So it's a very small batch and a very small number of shipyards. The real problem with the drawdown in the 90s is losing all the expertise. So now one of the challenges, we still have one of the things about that book we were talking about at lunch, the new book about high pressure steam,
which that's going to be a special, since Rick brought it up. That'll be a special with this 3 and Drachinifel. I think that's what we're going to do on Sunday.
Oh yeah, we were going to talk about that. Yeah, exactly.
So look for that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's already come out. I don't know. Future Jack hasn't decided.
Future Jack, yeah. Old Rick's lost his train of thought. So anyway, you lose all that expertise. Where was I? And so some of the problems we have now, you say, well, we have supply chain problems, and we do. Or we were talking in the office the other day about they build 1 SM-3 missile a month. Well, you can imagine how many they're going to be shooting off, right? They already are. against $500 drones. And so, but doesn't take them a month to build one missile. The problem is getting all the component parts. And apparently we dealt with that with high pressure steam, 38, 39, 40, 41, when you're building a 2-ocean Navy, that became a problem. So turns out that's not a new problem, but it's still a persistent problem, and we have it now. The other thing, though, is this expertise. You just do not have, and the one thing that comes up to the top of the list, they're going to be like plumbers, pipe fitters. They cannot get enough people, enough pipe fitters, but welders. And because of the pandemic, some people learn a lot of this stuff online and haven't had the practical experience.
I don't know how you learn how to weld online. I mean, I know that some of these places have like class days, where certain institutions, they'll partner, but yeah, that seems pretty strange how you can go through a program for welding and actually have very little time. It's like learning how to fly an airplane. Eventually, you kind of have to.
I don't know. The flight simulators are pretty good.
Yeah, I know, but eventually,
you're gonna have to do it.
But I mean, but to that end, though, the flight simulators are good. You could probably actually go all the way and learn an airplane without ever touching a stick. Don't know if you could do that with an actual skill like welding. It's like all the gun YouTube channels, they're all sponsored by like SDI, the Sonoran Desert Institute, which is a gunsmithing institute that's all online. And people are like, how do I learn how to tool gun parts through my computer screen? So it's this big scam. Okay.
Easy.
Today's episode brought to you by...
Yeah. And I imagine that one of the things we talk about is that unlike aircraft or cars, which are produced, so if you're going, I don't know, Mach 1.5, so you're going 1,000 miles an hour up there, and you got to do something in your F-18, your Super Hornet, when you reach up, you want the button to be in the same place every time. But as we know from ships, they're huge. They're like buildings. I mean, and they're, as you know, I'll tell Ryan, New Jersey, how many? 3 inches longer than the others? Yeah. Well, we have guys in the office who are CEOs of Aegis class cruiser. There isn't a Tycho that's identical. And why would it be? Because every shipyard is different too. So I imagine every welding procedure, there's some shipyards have different cranes. There's just so much different. There's so many variables here. So we need to build up that expertise again.
But even you said the Nimitz class carriers they're all different. And then,
no, you have 10, they're all 10 different ships. Yeah.
And granted, you build them over
and part of that
such a long period of time.
They were built over a long period of time.
So you introduce that error because it's unlike World War II where you're just churning out
all the Essex class carriers are built in this 3-year window.
Exactly. And well, if you're building
but they were different too. Some were short haul, some were long haul, some were built in Philadelphia. I'll tell you what, not to ding on our friends in New York, but the ships built in Philadelphia were better than ships built in New York. And one of the reasons why New York Naval Shipyard is not around is because, it's easy. You can do it. It's easy. When you used to have this friendly competition, say you're building in North Carolina and New York or in Brooklyn, and you're building in Washington here.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of close cooperation. But if you lay down a ship on one date and launch it on another, and one has problems or one doesn't, well, the Navy's not dumb. They kind of walk this back and see where the problems are, So you have different types of workforces, and you always have. The other thing about ships being different, it's kind of funny, is that the prospective commanding officer of North Carolina, he came on board and he's looking around. He goes, I don't like that, move it. I don't like that, move it. I want a chair there. He goes, I want to sit right here. And they're like, oh, okay. But you know what? I don't know what happened in Washington, but I'm guessing it's probably different.
Well, and that's why you can't find answers on this ship. Like when you're like, where's all my 20s go? One day if someone's like, well, I like a mount here, and the next day is like, well, we have to put something here, so then scrape it off and
this office that we're in does not look like this on any of the other Iowas.
Yeah.
And to your point, I heard a great story on Massachusetts when I was up there for a tour. They're talking about one of their early commanding officers was like 6.5 feet tall. It might have been an admiral commanding the task force. So he would walk around with a bar of soap and like mark on something, he wanted it move, and they'd like move the plumbing so he didn't hit his head on it anymore.
There you go. Yeah.
Perfect example.
That's perfect. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and that's all well and good until something breaks, and the ship takes damage, and then you got to fix it. Well, if your builder's blueprint says there's supposed to be a pipe here, but Joe Blow at this yard period moved this pipe to over there, how does that affect?
Well, you better hope you have it up to date. Like, you haven't gotten all the plans probably, but
What we have is not up to date.
yeah, but you better hope there is. But I'll tell you one thing. Now, this was a war emergency, but I know a little more about North Carolina than any of them. But is that she was rushed. She and Washington were rushed into commission. Just shortly after that, they had the Bismarck engagement, because that's what they're thinking. We're going to backstop the Royal Navy in the North Atlantic. So North Carolina deployed, and she was not only spent the first part of 42 in Maine, this case backstopping the Royal Navy against Tirpitz, but then deployed to the Pacific, arrived in July of 1942, and her electrical plans weren't done. They were just following her around. They never even got there. It took a long time before her electrical plan got to the ship.
Ha!
Well, you better hope, like you said, but the thing is, that brings up another point.
It doesn't break. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, is that I think they were more, correct me if I'm wrong, more self-sustaining. One of the issues now is that ships used to go to sea, like these Tychos. And that's the experience I have, like these guys are talking about in the office a lot. They would go with like a full spare parts complement.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much anything, and there'd be usually two of them with a carrier. Anything you didn't have something, probably someone else did. And then you just swap things out and that kind of stuff. And they knew how to manage all that. Well, now we're going to just-in-time delivery, and Amazon or FedEx might not get your part to the forward. I'm not saying we use that, but you get the idea. It's that we have a supply chain, and now it's based on just-in-time delivery. And these ships don't go to sea with a lot of spare parts, if any.
I get to give a lot of tours to active duty sailors. Whenever I take them in the machine shop, they're blown away by the amount of capability that's in there.
Exactly. Right.
And who's machining that kind of, like, this? Most of those sailors, all that equipment's foreign. Machining just as a trade, whether it's onboard ship or car parts or anything, that's going away. Being able to actually use tools like that. Now, granted, I mean, computer, like CNC milled machines, computer controlled stuff, but it's still a skill too. So I know. And didn't the Navy leave all your stock? Metal stock. They're like,
it's still in one of the uptake spaces, right where they left it. I'm sure they'll be back for it one day.
So we go mill. So we should go mill some gun parts. If
stuff in the machine shop still works.
There you go. All of it.
Just about every
Some
single
of it.
piece.
I mean, might as well. So Ryan, since we brought it up, so New Jersey's 3 inches longer.
Mm-hmm.
And what are there any other fun features that you can recall? Isn't one of the there's a passageway up in the superstructure?
Oh yeah, on the 04
that's
level.
Really strange.
My predecessor, the last curator of this ship, was legally blind, Jason.
Oh,
But
it
was like a progressive over time thing. Mm-hmm. So he knew his way around the ship like the back of his hand. Could do it in pitch black, no problem. He goes and visits Wisconsin one time and is walking around their bridge and walks straight into the wall because he's expecting there to be a door there.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great example of it. Yeah.
So that leads you to a very specific example. But what happens if the ship takes 4 torpedoes and all the power goes out and you got a bunch of guys in your lower deck trying to feel your way up?
And it's incredibly common, especially in the 80s. If you're trained as a gunner's mate on the 16-inch guns, you go from New Jersey to Missouri to these guys, like the gunnery officer on this ship then goes and is the gunnery officer on Iowa, and like they're just trading sailors back and forth. So you've worked on more than one of these ships, and they're similar but very different. I could easily see the lights going out and being like, "Oh shoot, was it Missouri or was it this one where there's a watertight door here?"
Just like like you said, walk right into a wall and be like, "Oh, yeah, now I'm dead." So with even modern ships being having, because you were mentioning watertight doors being on opposite sides of
some of the Tychos. Yeah, it might be on the starboard side, but it might be a passageway with a door,
yeah.
or a piece of equipment.
Mm-hmm.
It might be on starboard side on one ship, it could be on port side on another.
That's just still amazing that crews could train on one ship and have to jump around even today, and ships could be that different in terms of passageways and doors and like actual pieces of equipment and things. It's crazy.
You got to drill and train and drill and do it over and over again, on the way to the Western Pacific.
So so when the missiles start flying, as I think you mentioned in the force structure video, do we have the capacity? And I know the answer basically is no, but do we have the shipbuilding capacity and the repair capacity for a conflict like that?
Well, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on a U.S.-China war, but it's probably going to be a whole lot shorter because you're not going to have it. You're certainly not going to be able to build anything. Okay, so we just whatever you have on the day it starts, that's what you're fighting with, and you're going to have to win with that. Okay. The second part, repair. Well, who knows what changes in the near term? I don't know. Do we go back into the Philippines? Some people think Guam's not going to last very long. Didn't last very long in 1941, 42. So, are you going to have time to get back to Pearl Harbor? And what's the capacity of Pearl Harbor? So you got 3 Arleigh Burkes come in there and are kind of banged up. Are you going to get them done in time to get them back out? I don't know. Some are going to have to go to Puget Sound. We don't have that forward deployed repair capability. The damage could be a lot worse than we were experiencing in World War II. Mississippi gets hit by an aerial torpedo. She goes into the shipyard in a box, floating Drydock, little repair ship hooked up to it, all these things. They neck it out. She doesn't even have to go back to Pearl Harbor. She's right back on her line. I don't know if we have that capability right now, but it's probably not going to last that long. What you don't want to have is get to the point where you're so outnumbered. If we, in many ways, still hold a qualitative advantage, but as we often say, right? We always say it. Quantity has a quality of its own. So, we get to a point where we've lost one carrier, a couple Arleigh Burkes, 3 or 4. We may have taken out a whole bunch of them, but it may not matter, that kind of thing. So, we need to fix the ship repair thing, because what the real problem is right now, all the submarines are backed up. There's a whole bunch of attack boats that are just waiting to be repaired.
Well, then
lack of facilities.
And then USNI News also recently reported on the yards themselves and their inability, because they're trying to build contracts for the next round too, and the delays are affecting them, even getting those ships on the books. Down there, so that's going to be a real problem as well.
It's just a whole different proposition now. Not entirely different. There's many similarities, but at the same time, look at this Columbia class, which now is going to be...
That's been delayed.
That's the one. It's going to be pushed out to the end of this decade, and it's partly a component part problem that they build in Virginia and then put on a barge and take north and assemble. So a lot of shipyards are really ship assembly places. They're putting things together. It's not even really soup to nuts.
Well, I heard they were also having problems like the Type 21 U-boat during World War II, where you had all these yards in Germany building this, and then they would all come to the yards, the coastal yards. They had all these sections be put together, and then whole fittings. You had a piece of pipe that's supposed to be running straight through all these sections, and they're all inches off. So instead of having to just weld the sections together, bolt some pipes together, and send it, they spent a lot of time correcting
Right.
The actual, and I think that I had heard that too, where they were having issues with the actual subsections being delivered per instructions. For instruction.
Yeah.
I think that gets back to your point about New Jersey, and we said this ship's 3 inches longer than the rest, but it doesn't matter when you build the entire ship.
Exactly. And I'm sure, based on where I've seen parts on other Iowas, that like the blueprints, which were all done on paper, it's not a computer model where so the blueprints for this room and whoever drew the blueprints for that room might have it not line up. So the Philadelphia Shipyard decides, all right, we're going to have them line up here. And New York Shipyard says, all right, we're going to have them line up over here. And so you get that sort of thing. But like you said, they're building the whole thing there at the yard.
So you can make that change versus this whole section showing up on a truck one day and realizing that it doesn't line up. What are you supposed to do? And then it takes 6 months to send it back, have it fixed. Just more of our tax dollars flushed. Anyway, so war with China, we screwed.
Man, the Navy is one of our great institutions in this country.
Yes,
I'm sticking to it. They're going to hold their own out there, but we have to do something about two things. We need to work on this in defense industrial base. We need to develop and expand our capability. We need pipe fitters, that kind of thing. Where's it going to come from? I don't know. We got rid of Botech in high school now. Maybe they need to do things like that again. But the other thing is, we were talking earlier about how in the Defense Department, there's been this idea that's been going on for years, is that, well, the Air Force gets a third, the Army gets a third of the budget, and the Navy gets a third. Well, that has got to change. The next war is going to be a Navy and an Air Force war. So
you can train an infantryman or a Marine in a set period of time. Boot camp is however many months long, but training a fighter pilot takes years. Building a ship takes years.
Yeah. So we've got to build the ships before this numerical disparity grows a whole lot more. Because I don't know, in another say 10 years, they might have 150 more ships. And the problem is, we've got at this very moment, someone's in the Baltic, someone's shooting down Houthi drones in the Red Sea, we're in Westpac, we're in the Med, we're everywhere. Well, the Chinese, they could forward deploy if they wanted to, but they're not wanting to right now. So we're going to have to. They are a regional naval power. They're going to be able to concentrate their forces, and they have a whole lot more shipyards and repair facilities than we do right there. So what I don't want to think about is what happens if you lose. We lost 4 fleet carriers from the pre-war fleet in 6 months in 1942. And well, you can say Nimitz only had to hold the line because, well, he knew everything was coming. By mid 43, and then by
thank God for battleships.
Yeah, but all those carriers were all the battleships and the cruisers and the carriers. So by 44, at Saipan, it's just a tsunami rolls over them in this 45. Well, we're not going to probably have that luxury,
No.
These are the ships that are authorized in the 30s and laid down in the 40s, in like 1940, and they're finally ready to go in 43.
Yeah. But you could build a New Jersey in 3 years, but we can't build they're too complex. The issues are much different. You can't build an Arleigh Burke in 3 years. Can we learn? I don't know. That kind of thing.
No, they're too gold-plated.
Yeah.
What? How long does it take the South Koreans to build one of their King Sejong the Great Arleigh Burke esque ships?
Well, that's a great point, because apparently that's one of the things that we'll do. We'll get over this bureaucratic administrative hurdle, and we'll actually build ships. Everything over there is automated. When we cut steel, we okay, thanks. Here's a plate that we need. It fits right into the new Enterprise, and they sit it out in the yard and it sits there and rusts until they need it. Well, it does not happen, I can tell you, in Korea. They don't cut steel until it's going to be put somewhere, and it goes through this whole process. Very few people touch it. It never gets to a point where it's stuck outside and rusts, and it's just we've been building ships for a long time. The infrastructure got old. They came in later, and they're in a better position to help right now. So we're going to have to start doing stuff there. This period is probably not the best. You know, there's a little bit of a window here. The Chinese said, well, you know, they were talking about, you know, Taiwan back by the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party, Chinese Communist Party, that kind of thing, which is 2027. So there's a little window there. It's going to be a problem. They're picking on our allies, you know.
All the collisions with Philippine ships.
Yeah, they're bullying the Filipinos, the Vietnamese, and not so much the Koreans and the Japanese. One of the things I heard a few years ago is that Chief of Naval Operations, this is about 3 CNOs ago, he goes, you know, you really gotta contain the Japanese. They're ready to saddle up.
They're ready. Pearl Harbor, but whatever that Chinese port. You know, like.
Yeah. So they have things to worry about too. I mean, they have an economic, you know, they're slipping into deflation, and they have economic problems, demographic problems. I'm not sure they want to, you know, pick a fight with us, but if it comes to that, it could be, you know, what happens if we lose a carrier? De-escalate. Yeah, and then what? But they're nuclear power, we're nuclear power. I mean, this is kind of things that I'm not. People spend all day worrying about this stuff, and I don't, so I don't talk about it. But we do. The main takeaway on shipyards and the defense industrial space sector is that it's actually more important than the tip of the spear. You know, a lot of Navy people would argue the opposite. They go, oh no, too much logistics. You need more missiles and that kind of stuff. But the key to World War II, among many things, was that obviously being able to turn out hundreds and hundreds of ships.
Well,
and then repair them, and everyone else's too,
and fuel them, and ammo them. I mean,
in the forward area,
yeah,
too. And so so you know, we got a lot of work to do. You know.
Mm-hmm. With that said, what do you all think? Leave comments down below. Are we effed? Are we good? Can we do better?
How should Jack refer to Rick? My vote is Dad Rick.
You're welcome to use that too.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching. And we appreciate Rick for joining this conversation today on naval shipbuilding. And if you'd like, if you like Rick, go series, go check out Channel Markers. We've done quite a few and more coming. So thanks, everyone, for watching. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.